Hey, thanks for tuning in tonight. I got a great show for you. George Anastasia and David Schatzweiser here from Mob Talk. They got a great show on YouTube. I watch it religiously. We know that George Anastasia was a reporter, investigative reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and top mob guy in Philadelphia. I mean, this man's an expert with the Philly mob, going all the way back past Al Bruno. And Dave is also investigative reporter for Fox News. I mean, this is going to be a great show tonight. There's a lot of information here, so stay tuned, and I'll be right back with George and Dave. All right, I'm back with David. I'm back with George, and we're going to talk about this Boston-Philly connection that everybody's so curious about. I promise you guys I would do this show. So these are the best two guys. They're both experts from Philadelphia. You know that. So let's get into it right away, George, and talk about this connection that I made down in Philly.
Yeah, Dave and I were talking about this before. You arrived in Philadelphia at a very interesting time in the history of the Philadelphia mob. There was a lot going on, and you kind of parachuted into the middle of some crazy, crazy stuff. And so, tell us about Ralph Natale and Joey Merlino. They were the two dominant figures, I guess, when you came down. And what was your interaction with them?
Well, when I first came down, I have a friend in Boston, Frankie Rossi, that did time with Ralph. And when I was going through what I was going through up in Boston and wanted to break away from the Salami faction, Frankie kept suggesting that I go down to Philly and meet Ralph. So I went down to Cherry Hill, and I met Ralph at Cherry Hill at the pub, and I went down there twice and met with him down there. And from there, I met Giorgio Borghese down in Delaware at a restaurant. Me and Georgie hit it off real good. And Georgie was, I gotta tell you, he come with his baseball cap and his running suit. But let me tell you, Georgie was sharp. We had a lot of conversations together.
He's still wearing that, by the way.
Yeah.
Is he really?
Yes, sir. And an Eagles jacket, mostly. Eagles jacket, too.
I got to say this about Georgie and Joey. I mean, from a kid, my father was a gangster. I grew up with gangsters in Boston all my life. I mean, we're a different generation. We wear sneakers and jeans at that time. We're all running around in the street like kids. But compare them to a lot of the old timers I knew, they were pretty sharp, Joey and Georgie. I mean, that's what I liked about them, And I liked how involved they were and what they thought about this because of NOSTRA. And I seen a bond down there that I didn't really see in Boston with Georgie and Lancelotti and all these guys together. They had a real good crew. And that's what you need to hold this together.
Well, one of the things that people don't realize, for a lot of those guys, Georgie and Joey and those guys, they grew up on a corner together. I mean, they come out of the same neighborhood. So the bond was almost beyond COSA Nostra. These were the guys from, 12th and Wolf or wherever their corner was. They were from grammar school and high school. So that went way, 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 way back. And that's, I think, one of the reasons, if you look at Philadelphia, one of the reasons that particular group hasn't had an informant is that their loyalty to one another predates the mafia, predates organized crime. It's the neighborhood kind of thing. And I think that
it was. And that's the bond that you need to go forward in this. See, I made some of my cousins and my close friends. And it's important to have that around you. Joey had that reinforcement around him. He had that wall around him. He had guys that cared about him. Go ahead, Dave.
I'll tell you a little story. One of them, I won't say who, sat with me in the past year, put his hand on my shoulder and said, if those guys, meaning the FBI, thinks they're going to get one of the guys from our corner, our circle, to flip on the others, it'll never happen. Take that to the bank. And I got to tell you, the funny picture, and George has seen it, the guys all coming out of the Criminal Justice Center in Center City, Philadelphia after one hearing or something, Joey, Georgie, Marty, all the boys, and they're trying to go back to South Philly, and a cab pulls up, and 8 of them climb into that cab, sat on each other's laps, squeezed in next to each other, and we call it the taxi cab shot because it's the guys from the corner don't care if they sit on each other's lap. They're getting in the same damn cab together, and they're going back to South Philly from the courthouse. That's who those guys are, and that's exactly what George is talking about there. That loyalty goes deep.
It does. It does. It's amazing. And, you know, I really, you know, they opened their family up to me, and they took me in, you know. And what happened to me in Boston with the old crew that I was with, you know, it was bad. You know, I got pinched with Joey. We know about that pinch. And when I got pinched with Joey, I was facing 10 to 12 years. This was the Ronnie Previty, right?
Yeah.
And I'm only facing 10 to 12 years. And I'm in there with an ex-partner of mine. I don't want to say any names, you know. And we were in the block together. He come to me and said, Bobby, did you talk to your lawyer? Because they said there's murder indictments coming down. So I reached out to my lawyer, and sure enough, they came back 2 weeks later that they were ready to re-indict me on a murder 1 charge, you know, which changes that whole pinch because a lot of the guys that I was with in Boston lined up against me, you know, and but that's something we could get into a little later with the conversation. But what I did really had nothing to do with Philly, George. You know what I mean? I mean, those guys, they took me in. I tried to stay as loyal as possible I could to Joey and Georgie at the time.
Well, I mean, Ronnie Previty came up to Boston and set up that whole drugs thing. I mean, that's where you first got jammed up, right? I mean, Ronnie's up there with, was it McGowan, the FBI agent, and the cocaine?
What happened? What happened? All of a sudden, you know, Georgie comes to me, Joey, that this Ron Previty has a guy up in Boston. I didn't like Ronnie when I first met him. You know, I didn't like his appearance. I didn't like his. I didn't like nothing about this guy. In fact, I kind of was on top of him a little, to be honest with you, with a few things, you know, because I thought it was bullshit that he was even made a captain, was able to talk to me. And first they try to get me to move in with some sports and some swag and these different things. And then boom, they came with the drugs. When they first came to me with the drugs, we were at a party in Center City for Joel Gamby's son. You know, and Ronnie approached me with this drug thing, you know, and I wanted nothing to do with it. But it kept being forced on me naturally. You know, everybody wants to make money, you know. And Ronnie ended up jamming us all up.
Yeah.
I really felt I didn't have a choice but to sit with him. You know what I mean, George?
Yeah, I know. Well, and here's the interesting thing, and probably your people up in Boston don't appreciate this. Ronnie Previty is an ex-Philadelphia cop. Ronnie Previty is with the Stanford faction of the mob in the war against MERLINO and Natalia and those guys. And Ronnie Previty is the only major figure in the Stanford group that doesn't get indicted. Now that has to be a red flag. When Stanford and those guys go down, Ronnie doesn't go down. And even he, I mean, I was a good friend of Ronnie's. Even he was amazed that after that happened, he was able to segue from the Stanford faction to the Natalia faction, almost no questions asked. And he
it was ridiculous.
Well, yeah, he insinuated himself into that group, and then he agreed to wire up. So now he's wearing a wire for almost 2 years. Now, you know, the guys in Joey's faction say, well, we never trusted him with blah, 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 blah. That may very well be, but you let him get close enough to you that he was able to help make several serious cases.
And George, why did they let him get close? You know why they let him get close? Because he made money.
Well, Ronnie said that. Ronnie said, the reason I was able to get close to Ralph, Natalia, and Joe MERLINO is because I always brought them an envelope. Now, sometimes it was money the FBI gave him, sometimes it was money from the different things he had going. But I mean, that's part of the story down here in Philadelphia that maybe the folks in Boston don't appreciate. And you, Bobby, you get caught in the middle of all of that. The dynamics of what was going on. I mean, it was an amazing story. Yeah.
No, and listen, a bad cop got made by Stanford.
Oh yeah,
A bad
that's
cop.
right.
I don't give a shit. But he was a cop. Though.
Yeah.
You don't bring cops into the COSA Nostra.
Yeah.
That's that right there.
Yeah.
I
And you
knew
want,
about this. You got to remember, I'm sitting in Boston, Dave, right? And I'm watching all this A&E bullshit that's going on. And I'm watching about Philadelphia and you guys. And before I even went down there, and I see Previty walking with Stanford,
Right.
you know,
Right. That's a famous shot.
I see all this going on. Then I go down there and then I start to find out about this guy.
Yeah.
He escapes all those pinches. I don't know how. And then he ends up in Ralph's camp.
Well,
He's
I
the
mean,
one that put Ralph away.
yeah, I mean,
Bob, go ahead.
exactly. He jammed Ralph up with the mess stuff. Ronnie used to say that. He would say, "I wouldn't have trusted me. I don't know why they trusted me." I mean, it is what it is.
No
but
idea. I didn't trust him.
And if you want to hear a funny story,
Yeah.
the time period you're talking about, I'm not in the news. I'm working as the director of communications for the Attorney General's office in New Jersey.
Right.
Get
And
out of here.
we subpoena John Stanford to a grand jury at the Criminal Justice Center in Trenton. And that famous picture of Stanford walking with Sal Avina, his lawyer,
Right.
Vince
Yeah.
Filippelli, and Ron Previty, the picture you're talking about,
Yeah.
my office orchestrated that.
Yeah.
Because you don't ever talk about grand jury stuff when you're in that level. But it was
Right.
no secret, let me say that, no secret that those guys were coming to the grand jury that day. And George, you
Mhm.
know this, there were 12 camera crews there,
Right. Yeah.
followed them from the parking lot into the lobby of the CJC over there. And here's the funny part. Justin Dentino, who was the colonel of the state police at the time, stood in that lobby and stared Stanford, Previty, Avina, and Filippelli down as they rode up the escalator to the second floor where the grand jury met. And I stood right next to him along with some of my colleagues watching John Stanford and his crew go to the grand jury. And those are the pictures you see of them all together. And George, they were four pals right there.
Yeah.
And they were going to the grand jury together.
And
That's
so,
that's sad.
you're in a position where you've got to deal with Ronnie because that's the word from Philadelphia. Deal with this guy. He's our guy.
Well, yeah, let me tell you how it happens.
Yeah.
Joey made him a capo.
Right.
So I grabbed Ronnie. We're at a party. I says, "You're a capo. Where's your guys, bro?" I mean, I'm a capo. I got a Dejin. I got a lot of guys with me, Where are your guys? Who are these guys? I want to be introduced to them. You never introduced me to these guys. Where are they? Oh, don't worry. I got guys. So I know this is our bullshit already now. We're going through with this shit. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Now he's coming up to Boston, right?
Right.
This Irish Mike, we called him.
Right. McGowan.
Now, I had a big Irish crew in Boston. Those are all my friends that were with me. I'm trying to find out about this Irish Mike. No one knows nothing about him.
The ghost.
My Irish guy says, "Bobby, I won't go near this guy." So now I'm palling them off. He called me one time. We had to sit down. Ronnie was there. I said, "Listen, if anybody bothers you guys, just tell them you're with the Luisi family. They'll leave you alone. You got a problem, get in touch with my cousin. I don't want to say which one, and that was going to be his contact to my crew if he had a problem." That was the first introduction. Then they started with the nonsense. Furs, this, that. But I don't move swag. That's not my thing, But they tried to get me. They were setting up a RICO, obviously, on me. That's what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
With the sports and everything, When this thing came down with the drugs, I pulled all my guys back because I really believed that Mike was a rat. I didn't know he was an FBI agent. I actually had sit-downs in Boston with my guys. I was looking to clip Ronnie to stop all of this. If I clip Ronnie, then I would have had a problem with Joey.
You would have had the FBI too, even though you didn't know it. I mean,
Yeah.
I did, but I'm not thinking that deep into this.
Yeah.
I'm saying McGowan might be an agent. I don't know. But Ronnie, I know what he is.
Yeah.
And thank God we never did nothing to either one.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, there was a lot of talk about Ronnie and Mike up there. They were both in a dangerous position there for a little while with me. And then finally, I got pushed to the point that I had to sell them cocaine from Philly. I'll leave it at that.
And then you end up getting jammed up because
I got jammed up.
Yeah, exactly.
And what's your thoughts when you get when the indictment comes down and you're right in the heart of that thing, Bob?
I'll tell you, I was sick because I knew, they came and picked me up. And then Georgie had called my wife. And when I called home, I found out Joey, everybody else got picked up.
Right.
So every time we get picked up, everything changes. We know this. I'm off the street. I'm the boss up there. I'm the guy. They just pulled me off the street. I don't care if it's for 10 years, 5 years, whatever. You're off the street. And every time someone went off the street, we went right in behind them and took all this stuff. You know what I mean, George?
Yeah.
So I didn't know. I knew Joey would be all right with Philly with his crew because those guys are all loyal. As soon as I went in, my cousin's gone in the gym. They ended up going away for murder. I lost Sean Bateri. He was pinched with me. And I just knew everything was going to fall apart. You know what I mean, George?
Yeah.
And that's what Ronnie did.
And then after that, you say you got jammed up. There was talk of a potential murder case coming up.
Oh, there was. Well, there were several murders I was involved with in Boston. I'll put it that way.
Right.
When my friend came to me, we were in Plymouth at the time. When he came to me and told me this, when I reached out to my lawyer, luckily Marty Bedreau was an AUSA out of the Boston office. He had just left there and started his practice in my lawyer's office.
Right.
I hired him for Bobby Garrenti. Then he came down and told me when I told my lawyer Jack about this murders that I heard about. He said, Bobby, listen, I can get you 10 to 12 on your case right now, but you're not getting out. They didn't indict you on this grand jury because they indicted you with the Philly guys. But the next grand jury, there is definitely one murder one that they're bragging how solid they got all your friends are ratting on you. They got you solid on the murder. It was like 1 out of 3. I'm pretty sure what the indictment was over, who it was over. I wasn't sure until today who was actually ratting on me. I didn't know. But this come right out of an AUSA's mouth that I was gone. I was done for. I wasn't going to see light.
Hey, Bob, can we ask you a question? This has been long time rumored here in Philadelphia that you were or your guys were involved in a homicide in Philadelphia, that they brought you guys down from Boston to do it. They gave you the supplies to do what you had to do. You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but it's always been a thought down here in Philadelphia that you guys were involved in a homicide down here.
Well, Dave, that's a little hard for me to discuss right now.
I understand that. That's why I said you don't have to answer if you don't want to.
And you have to remember something.
There's been no charges.
Yeah, you have to remember something. When I did what I did, I really couldn't go through with it. I did a little talking, I'm not gonna lie. But to, be a rat and to sit on a stand against my friends in Philadelphia, I couldn't do it, Dave. I just couldn't do it. So negotiations broke down, which you know about, George, because you were around Ronnie, and basically the FBI in Boston had a bad hot on for me, and some of the things I did talk about with the murders up here, I guess I got away with, praise God. But anything past Boston or whatever happened down in Philadelphia, I really, I got to be careful what I say.
Understood.
I mean, as Dave mentioned, nobody's been charged. There's about, what would we say, 4 or 5, maybe 6 homicides down here that have never been adjudicated. And that hangs over everybody's head down here. Every time New Rico, the question is, is one of the old murders going to be in it? And Dave and I know from talking to people, the feds would love to resurrect some of those cases, but they haven't been able to do it. So,
and that's the primary thing we think George Borghesi's worried about these days. He's not doing anything currently that we're aware of is illegal. In fact, he'll tell you he's not doing anything illegal. We don't commit crimes. I'm not doing that kind of stuff anymore. Joey says the same thing, but I think they worry, as George just said, that little devil hanging behind them that might bring back one of these old murders and put that on them.
Yeah, the statute of limitations never, it doesn't apply here. So it's always out there.
Well, see, here's the problem with me even talking or saying anything. You know how the conspiracies are with the federal government. If I knew a guy that knew a guy that hit one of these guys, they're gonna pinch me for it.
Right.
You know, it's just so scary to talk about it, you know, to bring these things back up, you know. But yeah, in Boston, they accused me of a few things down in Philly that I didn't even know about.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
How's that?
that kind of answers the question right there.
You like that? It was that
I did
good.
like that. I did like that. Very nicely
Yeah,
done.
that's good. That's good.
Hey, George and I have been wanting to ask you, Bob.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead. This segues good into this. Go ahead.
George and I talked about this earlier today.
Yeah.
You know, we're all over the Gardner Art Museum heist here in Philly. George and I have done 2 or 3 mob talks about that, mob talk sit downs. And we're always wondering, from a Boston guy's perspective, about that robbery, what you think about it, because it's a $500 million art heist, the biggest ever, still unsolved to this day. And you were at least around some of the guys who allegedly were involved in it. What's your take on that heist? And do you think that'll ever get solved?
No, I don't think it ever will. I just did a show last week with Steve Kirchen, who was kind of the expert on that. You know who Steve is. He's a great guy, Steve. Yeah. And I just did a show last week on that. You know, and to me right now, it's a bunch of conspiracy theories. I'm going to tell you why. 1992 or 93, Bobby Garrenti started coming around. He was related to a May guy in the Petriacca family, you know. I hooked up with Bobby. We did a lot of things together, you know, that, again, we can't really talk about on the show.
Yeah.
And Bobby Garrenti was a serious guy. I'll tell you that. Very serious guy, you know. Do whatever he had to do. Could he have been in there in that museum and robbed that stuff? Absolutely. Absolutely. What I think happened, and my thought on all of this, George and Dave, I think someone paid them to go in there to maybe get a certain piece of art, you know, and then they did what they had to do, and then they went a little crazy and just started taking everything they could, you know. Yeah, but I really believe something had to incite them for going in there. Why would you go in there with Rembrandts and all these beautiful works of art just to steal them and hide them? It makes no sense.
Yeah.
If someone come to me and said, "Hey, Bobby, there's a Rembrandt in there. I'll give you 100,000 for it. If you could get it out of there for me, Mickey, I'm gonna go look for everybody to put this together." You understand?
Yeah.
But if I knew I could get in that museum to take a piece of artwork, just to have it, I couldn't do that. And I know Bobby Garrenti, Bobby Gentile, and these guys, you know, it's about money. For Bobby to go in there, he had to get some money. Bobby Donati, he had to get some money, you know.
And Bobby Gentile, Bob, you know, he's the only guy still alive who was allegedly part of that, although he vehemently denies that and his lawyer denies that. What's your thoughts about him?
Well, Bobby, we called him the cook, Bobby Gentile. Was around me all the time. He was like a consigliere to me with the things I was doing up. A sharp guy, believe me. He was good old man. And a bad guy, you know. He never once mentioned the artwork to me. Never once. Never came up in a conversation. So when they come to me about him, I says, you know, he never told me anything. You know, there's stories that Bobby Garrenti's wife, we called her Auntie naturally. Auntie told the FBI that Bobby Gentile had something to do with this. There was no proof of it. He denies it. You know, the FBI came to me and told me that the artwork went through Philadelphia.
Right. That's something else we've heard consistently. At least some pieces came through Philadelphia.
It could have, because Bobby Garrenti's wife told the FBI that he handed some artwork to Bobby Gentile. Now, is that from the Gardner? Is that from another robbery? Is that something he was sitting on? I don't know. I really don't know. But up to 1999, there was no talk of artwork down in Philadelphia. And if it did go down there while I was on the street, I would have knew about it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, is this precious art now in somebody's garage or buried in the dirt somewhere, or is it in some rich guy's den and nobody else is going to ever see it? I mean,
you know, it's funny because in this life, let's say I send David to do something for me. David gets it done. Now, David could have took you and another guy with him. I don't know. I don't ask David these questions.
Right, right.
David, you did it. You took care of it. That's how I was brought up. It's done. Let's not talk about it no more. You understand? That's how we are. That's how we look at things. When Bobby Garrenti was sitting on the couch, I had a beautiful place up in Walton, safe house. I had a shitload of safe houses, you know. And we're sitting up there. We're on the couch. Miles Connor comes on TV and they're talking about the artwork and the Gardner. And Bobby Garrenti turns around to me and says, I know where the art is. It's buried under a slab in Florida.
Oh, man.
If I knew what it was going to entail, the money that it was going to be worth, I might have said, where is it? Let's take a plane right now. Oh, come on, we'll go get it. We'll go dig it up. We had enough money in the room. We'll go buy the house, wherever it is. Let's go get this shit. But I had no idea. I had nothing to do with it. I wasn't interested in it. And I dropped it like I did with everything else, Judge.
Yeah.
Let me ask
You
you
know
this.
what I mean? But I don't have to know. I don't want to know.
I hear you.
Let me ask you this. This is something else that's come up in later years. With the reward that was out there, $5 million, $10 million, a couple of guys have said to me, if anybody here in Philly knew where any of that was, they would arrange to collect that reward money.
I believe that.
Nobody's going to be jammed up. Nobody can be charged with the crime. If they knew, they or a lawyer would have come forward and said, hey, I can get you this. Give me the $5 million. I mean, do you agree with that, Bobby? It seems to me that's common sense kind of thing.
Well, here, let's, there's two ways to look at this, George. Omerta. If something went through the guys down here in that little crew, in that tight circle, I don't care if there was a $10 million reward. I don't think they would say anything. That's just my opinion of those guys, you know? There's other people, 10 million, they jump on there, they give up their mother, you know? But you're not going to see that with Georgie, Joey, Lance, Marty, Steven. You're not going to see it.
Yeah.
Do I believe it went through there? I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't
Well,
know.
funny story. When George and I did the Mob Talk sit down about the Gardner art heist, I
Yeah.
talked to Gentile's lawyer, and he actually said, you know, if I could go find out where that's from, because no one can be charged in it right now, and I could get Bobby Gentile $10 million at the time, that's what the reward was. I get him the $10 million. His family would be good for the rest of their lives when he passes on.
Yeah.
And he told me he had no idea. That's what the lawyer told us. So he has repeatedly said he has nothing to do with it, although I do believe those paintings were here in Philadelphia for a short period of time after you guys went to jail, 2000, 2001. At least 3 of them passed through Philadelphia and possibly through an art dealer in the Rittenhouse Square area who had connections in New York. That's the story I've been told here in Philly by guys who I would say could know, not didn't know, could know.
Again, let's talk again.
Yeah.
Gentile's a May guy in the Philadelphia family.
Right.
And if that did happen, do you think he's going to say something?
Nope.
This guy's going to the grave with it,
Sure.
with the rest of his secrets.
Bob, let me ask you this, because you've mentioned this to me before. In terms of high-end stolen art, there's not a big market for that. It's not like
There isn't.
you're ripping off some security bonds and you can take them somewhere and unload them. It's a limited market. So that's why
Very
I like
limited.
the theory that maybe they went in to get 1 or 2 pieces and then they just got nuts when they were in there and took 7 or 8 instead. Now
That's what I believe happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are we going to do with this stuff now? You know,
Right.
it's like the baby formula when in the Previty days when they were ripping off
Truckloads.
trailer loads of stuff down at the Delaware Avenue in Philly. They robbed a tractor trailer load of baby food formula and they couldn't unload it. I mean, there's some things that there is just not a market.
They couldn't even get rid of a Lamborghini, George. Remember that?
Oh yeah,
The yellow one. Remember that?
So
I got to tell you a story. My father's crew made a score in New Hampshire. They robbed that guy for hundreds and hundreds of pounds of marijuana. The stuff was garbage. It ended up rotten, and we ended up getting rid of it.
yeah,
Not everything is a score, George.
yeah. See,
You know, it's just not. It's just not. If it's baby food, drugs, it's not a score. Well, we're going to take a short break here, and I'm going to come back with part 2 of the show. So stay tuned. You're going to enjoy the rest of it.